Okay. This is a tiny little hammer. Yep, just a tiny little hammer. Nothing special or remarkable about it. For those of you that are listening to this in podcast format, I just held up a tiny little hammer. You would typically use this for a tiny little project. You know, if you were hanging a tiny little picture on the wall, you get yourself a tiny little nail and then use the tiny little hammer and then just, you know, and then that's what you use it for. Yeah, not much to really speak of there. This is a regular-sized hammer. You know, you would use this for more standard construction projects, you know, like regular nails and stuff, you know, hanging stuff into the wall. I actually had to use this one when I was hanging King's giant picture over there. So, you know, this is a more standard hammer. This is 16 ounces right there. It's a hyper-tough hammer. It's a nice hammer. You can definitely do some damage with this. Okay. Now this... Oh! This is the hammer, okay? This is the big hammer. This is the hammer you use when you are really done playing around, okay? This is the quintessential hammer, the apex of a hammer. That's the hammer Eam just dropped in the last chapter, okay? There you go. See? Oh, no, we're good. I leave a giant dent in my desk because of that. No, all right, see? It was a metaphor the whole time. There we go. All right, this will be a spoiler for chapter 1060 of One Piece. If you have not read chapter 1060 of One Piece, I would advise that you go check it out. I haven't really given out any spoilers yet. If you haven't read the chapter, all you're thinking is like, wait a second, does Eam have the power of hammers? Does Eam have the hammer no me? He just drops hammers. He just summons an entire storm of hammers. People were throwing out a bunch of random ideas for Eam. Maybe he has the power to harness the ocean itself, like the true water no me, or the ocean no me, or something like that, or the strongest conquerors hockey in the world. No, he could just summon hammers, but he could summon a lot of them, okay? All right. So, yes, we witnessed what is, so to speak, the closest thing to nuclear power in the One Piece world. You know, that was something I've actually talked about before, you know, with Vegapunk existing. Also throughout the idea of what would happen if there was, like, ever, like, a nuclear devil fruit or something like that, like a Logia with the power of, like, radiation or something, okay? And so, yeah, we kind of witnessed that. Not necessarily a nuclear weapon, but essentially the equivalent of that in the One Piece world. We got to see why the world government has such a stranglehold on the entire planet right now, okay? And I think we saw the real reason why the world government has lasted for 800 plus years, okay? Because that is a very, very long time, all right? It really is. Even in our world, having, you know, empires or kingdoms that last longer than that, it's pretty impressive. Even the Romans, you could argue, did last a lot longer than that. If you go from like the very beginning of the Roman kingdom all the way up to the fall of Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire, yeah, that's like over 2,000 years. But that wasn't like consistent, you know, like all the way through. They were a kingdom, then a republic, then an empire, then the empire split in two, and one of the sides fell, and then the other side began, you know, stuff like that. But that was very impressive for the Romans, okay? The Egyptians lasted about 3,000 years, so that's also very impressive. But, you know, even so, there was a lot of hiccups in between that, you know, like the Egyptians were conquered a few times. The Roman Empire had a lot of problems a few times, right? This, from what we understand in the One Piece world, the world government has had a consistent, concurrent control, absolute authority over the entire One Piece world. We still don't know the name of the planet, but the entire One Piece world for 800 plus years. Okay, and, you know, there's a lot of reasons that I previously stated, you know, that might have had something to do with that. Geography, remember, the whole reason geography is everything, that started when I was talking about the world government and Marijois, because their home base of operations is on top of a giant mountain that really nobody can access unless they give you permission to, because flying machines aren't really common in the One Piece world, right? So geography is certainly a big factor. They are literally like kings of the hill, so to speak, you know? Eam is Hank Hill the entire time. He takes off the cloak, you know, it's like Vivi is right before him. You know, Vivi gets dragged into the empty throne room and then thrown down, and Vivi's like, get off of me, what do you want with me? And then the Gorosei are like, "Our king wishes to speak with you, Princess Vivi." And then, "Your king? But you're the Gorosei." "What?" And then she looks up, and then Eam appears on the empty throne, takes off of his cloak, and just like, "Hey there, Vivi. I was wondering if you would like to purchase some propane and propane accessories. It'll really make Alabasta the clean energy burning." Like, yeah. "You'll really up your barbecue game in that desert kingdom, Vivi." But no, seriously, folks, I'm going to say the main reason the government has been so successful for so long in the One Piece world is probably because Eam has a giant orbital satellite death laser cannon circling the globe, I guess, at any given time, that can literally nuke an island out of existence. I'm going to say that's a pretty big reason. I mean, geography is also in there, but the giant orbital death laser, I'm going to say maybe a good 80% of the reason why the world government is as strong as it is. Okay, now, they probably don't bust out the orbital death laser very often, They probably don't, like, every single time there's a problem in the world, because if that was the case, they would have used the orbital death laser on the revolutionaries or on any island that would speak against them, or any island, because there are islands in the One Piece world that are not allied with the world government at all. And I'm not just talking about Wano, like the really important ones. I'm talking about some other random islands in the Four Blues and the Grand Line that are just not allied with the government at all. So, if they didn't care about anything, they would just like, okay, send the orbital death laser, that island, every island that doesn't ally with us just gets obliterated, right? They're clearly not doing that, so it probably lends to a few things. Number one, the death laser might not be able to do that all the time. Maybe there's like a recharge, time period, a cooldown period it has to do, so they can't just blast islands willy-nilly. But also the main reason is probably because, like, if that were to happen, like if the world government were to just obliterate every single island that, like, disagreed with them, that pretty much tells the entire populace of the One Piece world, hey, I think that the world government has a giant orbital death laser that can wipe us out at any given moment. Yeah, Bill, I think you might be onto something there. Yeah, it's just weird, It's like, there's 170 nations in the world government, and every other nation got obliterated by this thing. What are the odds? You know what I mean? Yeah, no. So as the Gorosei mentioned during the Reverie, they talked about the cleansing, or as I call it, the purge, because that's just a cooler thing to say. But the cleansing, at any rate, is something that they do every couple hundred years. They don't typically use it like just, whenever they feel like it. They have to kind of wait for some time to pass before they do it again. And that makes sense because the world government has complete control over history and education and everything in the One Piece world. So if an island got obliterated, let's say 400 years ago, got wiped off of the map by the orbital death laser, which may or may not be Uranos, the ancient sky weapon. Hold on that for a moment. But, if an island got wiped out like 400 years ago, government removes it from the history books. Maybe a few people might ask some questions about it in the here and now, but then generations pass, years go by, propaganda spreads, and then eventually nobody knows about that island that existed 400-something years ago. Nobody cares, and it's not in any of the books. People just forget about it. As is the case with the Lulusia Kingdom in the last chapter, where we saw where King Seki ruled. That's where Moto was, the farm girl that, Ace helped out during his cover story. And then also that was where Sabo was hiding. It was one of the 8 rebelling nations in the world that revered Sabo as the Flame Emperor and everything. And by the way, I have to say, if I was going to pick a character that had the shittiest luck in the entire story, I think I might go with Sabo here, okay? Sabo literally was like, okay, I got to escape Marijua, I got to get out of here. Front page story, Sabo assassinates Cobra. Is like, that's not true, that didn't happen, and Vivi's kidnapped, I didn't have anything to do with that. Okay, I got to retreat to a friendly nation. I'm going to go to the Lulusia Kingdom and hold up there for a while I figure everything out. And then he goes there, and then just like, Dragon, why is there a giant orbital death laser in the sky? Man, he cannot just catch a break, can he? Man, he had the amnesia when he was a kid. My goodness, okay? So, yeah, poor Sabo. I'm assuming now. Listen, here's something to bring up, and I was gonna mention this more in the review, and I just forgot to. With everything that was going on. So Sabo is most definitely alive because this is like the third or fourth, death fake out moment we've had with Sabo. I don't think Sabo's just straight up dead. He got away somehow. He does have a Logia. He does have the ability to fly. I'm assuming like, oh no, a giant orbital death laser, and he just like whoosh, had to leave the island like there was nothing else he could have done, right? But I want you to imagine how many citizens in the One Piece world just died. Like, the hammer metaphor is kind of apt when you consider that. Like, that was an entire island. I'm going to repeat that again. That was an entire decently sized island with a kingdom on it. A kingdom. All right, you don't call yourself a kingdom when you only have like, yeah, we got the castle and like 3 villages. It's like an RPG from like the early 90s or something on a Super Nintendo. It's just like, yeah, you go into the new town. It's like a town in a Pokemon game where you walk into town, there's like 4 houses, a Pokemon Center, and like maybe 1 building of note, and then that's it. You know what I mean? No, this was a whole ass kingdom. In fact, this is one of the more prominent kingdoms in the One Piece world because remember, King Seki, who was the ruler of Lulusia, got an invite to the Reverie. Not every king in the entire world government gets an invite to that, okay? Only the 50 most powerful kings, queens, rulers of the world get an invite to the Reverie conference, okay? And they sit around the round table, 50 of them, right? There's over 170 nations in the world government. So those 50, it was like Alabasta, Dressrosa, Proden's Kingdom. You also had, Fishman Island with Neptune there and everything. Those are the most prominent kingdoms in the world that get an invite. And Lulusia was one of them. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say several million people just died in the One Piece world, right? It may be including Moda. I'm hoping she didn't die, but she might be dead right now. She didn't seem like she was going to escape or anything like that. So Sabo might be very well the only survivor of the Lulusia Kingdom. King Seki and his daughter Komane, the princess, they're probably dead. Moda and her family are probably dead. So all those people that Ace helped out in that, honestly, kind of a wholesome sort of cover series. It was about Ace looking for Blackbeard. He stumbles upon the Lulusia Kingdom, and they have the milk, and then he sneaks into G2, a Marine base, and the Marines don't have good milk for their coffee, and so Ace gives them like a note, like, hey, go check out this island for some good milk. And then Comil, who was the vice admiral in charge of G2, was like, all right, I guess I'll go check out this farm. Oh, this milk is so great for our coffee. Ah, great. Yeah, that entire island is wiped out now. Holy shit, they're all dead. Okay. So that's not something that happens very often in the One Piece world. It honestly kind of reminds me a lot of Skypiea. It reminds me of the Death Pia, the Raiga thing that Eneru did, right? And this reminds me of an old saying that one of the most profound literary artists of our time, Nuxtaku, once told me back in the day. He sat me down and he said, all right, Tekking, listen up. Skypiea is like a microcosm of all of One Piece. And I didn't understand what he meant by that. I was like, Nux, this makes no sense. And he's like, you got to believe me. You got to trust me on that one. And I was like, okay, I guess. And now here we are. And yeah, kind of. If you go back and look at it. Something else that I did in the review that I didn't even plan on, is when the death lasers all rained down and bombarded the Lulusia Kingdom, I decided to count the laser beams. I was just like, I guess I'll count the laser beams. It's probably not relevant, but whatever. So I counted them, and it came out to 16 laser beams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 death laser beams. Okay. A lot of people were quick to bring up, hey, does that have anything to do with Doflamingo's final attack he used against Luffy at Dressrosa? as in Doflamingo's final attack with his awakened Ito Ito no Mi, the string fruit, was, 16 holy bullets, Gondel thread! So Dofi uses his awakening to basically turn the surrounding area into string, and then he takes that string and he winds it up really tight to basically form super sharp, like, spear tips, essentially. Then he adds armament hockey on top of that, and 16 holy bullets, and fires them at Luffy. Luffy uses the King Kong gun to break through them and punch out Dofi and save the day. And so that's, also a reference to the number 16, and so Doflamingo obviously is a celestial dragon, and he has a very interesting relationship with the Gorosei and the world government. He's sort of like their problem child, because he is no longer a celestial dragon, but he still knows a lot of stuff about, the history of the world and, stuff in the, world government's closet that, they don't want the world to know. And, what I just realized was Doflamingo, he's in Impel Down right now, and they evacuated all of level 6, so he is the only prisoner on level 6 right now, and that apparently was an order by the government, because they don't want Doflamingo saying anything to anyone about what he knows. Would that not be interesting if the one of the pieces of information that Doflamingo knows, because I'm sure he knows a lot of different things the world government doesn't want to get out, but what if one of them is Doflamingo knows about the ancient weapon Uranos, if that is truly what it is, or the death orbital laser, even if it's not Uranos, which I'm thinking it is, because it would make sense for the world government to have at least one ancient weapon under their freaking control, so that's once again kind of cements how they were able to control the world. It's their kill switch. It's their last ditch effort sort of thing. If there's a rebellion at some point, or if things get out of hand, or if Marijois under attack, or if it looks like they're not going to be able to make it out of this, that's when they use their kill switch. That's when they press the Uranos button, obliterate an island or two, and then all opposition is removed, wiped from the board, and then they reset, okay? So they don't use it very often, but it would make sense that they have one of those. It would also make sense why they would be so terrified of the other ancient weapons, Pluton and Poseidon, because the only thing that could oppose one ancient weapon is another ancient weapon. So that's why they want to get all three of them under their control, so then they can truly have absolute power over the entire world government, or over the entire world as the world government, right? I should say. So yeah, what if Doflamingo knows about this? What if Doflamingo's in his jail cell right now, and if there was anybody else in level 6, he'd be like, hey, guess what, man? He's like, what? You're Doflamingo, right? He's like, yeah. Hey, guess what? The world government has an ancient weapon called Uranos. It's a giant sky death laser. Really? Yeah, the government does not want that getting out. Or maybe Doflamingo knows about the existence of Eam as well. That would be another thing why they would want to assassinate Doflamingo. And it was mentioned, Doflamingo, there might be an assassin coming for him in Impel Down to eliminate him because of the stuff that he knows, right? Now, this is something else I found out, and there's probably, this might be a grasping at straws kind of moment. There might be no connection here whatsoever, but it is Oda, so who knows? So, in the review, I talked about this scene right before the time skip. This is from episode 511 in the anime, and it's chapter 594 titled Message in the manga. And so this is a scene where we just see the various supernovas entering the new world for their first time, okay? We see Kid there on the one random island. We see Apu running on air. We see Hawkins at Food Vaulton, which, Whitebeard used to control, and then he died, and then Brownbeard took over, and then Hawkins wiped him out, you know what I mean? So we see a scene with Beiji and the Fire Tank Pirates sailing in the new world, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, their ship just gets lifted up out of the ocean, and like a gravitational pull gets drawn into this massive, moon-like object that's hovering above them, above the new world, and the ship hits it, and it has these... I don't know, I thought they looked like vents. Some people think that they look like other islands, other giant rocks that get picked up by this thing. Could be that as well. But, I mean, I'm just saying, the thing that fired a bunch of lasers at the Lulusia Kingdom in the last chapter, we didn't actually get to see what it looked like. It was hidden in the clouds. But if you see this thing, you could see a bunch of laser beams coming out of this, it just seems pretty obvious, lasers just firing out of these different vents or the whatever. Yeah, so we have no idea what this thing is. It was never talked about what this thing is. To add a little bit more flavor to it, and this wasn't in the manga to be fair, but in the anime how this scene actually got, built up to, right before the scene with Beiji, there was the scene with Kid and Killer, and they were, they were wiping out that pirate crew on that random island, staking them up and everything like that. And there was one scene with that pirate captain that's like, please, just let us go back to paradise. You have no idea the terrors of the new world. And then immediately after that, it cuts to Beiji being sucked up by this giant, like, object with its own gravitational pull. So it's either the moon, Uranus, or Peter Griffin. Either way, none of those are a good thing for the One Piece world, okay? Yeah, it's like, eh. Yeah, no, oh my god, that does sound like a joke Family Guy would do. Oh my god. Man, Lois, this is crazier than the time I got turned into an ancient weapon Uranus. Like, okay, no. So, it was sort of like a build-up, like, oh my god, the terror of the new world, leave this place and never return. And the next scene is like Beiji getting absorbed by this thing. Now, how did the fire tank pirates escape that? They might have figured out some way to, like, free their ship and get it knocked back down to the ocean, and then this giant moon thing just sailed away into the distance, and they were like, what was that? I'm like, I don't know. All right, I guess we just keep going in the opposite direction and hope we don't run into that thing again. Like, okay, there you go. Yeah. So, also something important to bring up, whoever Eam is, clearly has control over this thing, like psychic control over this thing. We didn't see Eam, like, inside of this thing, like piloting it, or Eam, using like a game controller or something, just like, all right, I guess I gotta, pull up the ancient weapon today. That's all right. Move it over there, and fire. Like, no, it wasn't anything like that. So, how does Eam control this thing? If Eam is the only person that can control this thing, I could see why you would consider Eam the supreme ruler of the entire world government. If you say anything bad about him or her, that's another thing too. Okay, here's the thing about that. We saw in the chapter that someone was, like, scratching out Lulusia on a map, okay? And this chapter is very weird because it jumps around a lot. We see shots with Eam, we see shots with Sabo, we see shots with the Gorosei in the Room of Authority, we see shots with the wiretapping division. By the way, the wiretapping division intercepted no calls on this day. Keep that in mind. So we cut around a lot, and the entire time we're cutting around visually, we're also cutting around, just in terms of audio, in terms of, like, dialogue and discussion, because there's the conversation that Sabo is having with Dragon and the revolutionaries, and that's being overheard by the wiretapping division, which they heard nothing. And then the Gorosei are also talking, and then Eam shows up, and Eam doesn't talk, but Eam is just very intimidating, like, So all this is going on, so I'm not really sure who, like, crossed out Lulusia on the map. Like, that could have been somebody else at another location. I guess it could have been one of the Gorosei. But I will say that we do sort of see part of the hand of the person that is crossing it out. And it seems to be a very slender, delicate kind of hand. It's not like big, meaty claws or anything like that, right? It seems like a very slender kind of hand that picks up the paintbrush and just... There's been a theory for a while that Eam might be a woman. So, like, the queen of the entire world or something like that. Very possible. We just don't know, but that does add some believability to it, okay? Or they might just have very delicate hands, okay? That just might be it. They might be a hand model. Who knows, right? Okay. But that honestly is impressive because that might be the very first time we saw, like, anything, because the only thing we know about Eam is their general, like, body structure. They're very thin, they're very lanky. Their eyes, which are very intimidating, and then also, I think we see an outline of their mouth, but it's still, like, in silhouette, or, like, their nose. They're very clearly, human-shaped, if nothing else. Like, I don't think it's gonna turn out, like, to be some weird alien from, like, another planet or something like that. Hold on, write that down. Eam takes off, their cloak, and it's like, oh, I am an alien from the planet Alpha Centauri. Holy crap, they're aliens! You know what I mean? Like, that's something, but we do get to see Eam's actual, like, hand not covered by anything, so, they have a regular hand and fingernails and stuff, so there's that, I suppose. But yeah, how does Eam control and manipulate the ancient weapon? If this actually is the case, it really does give believability that all of the ancient weapons, at least an aspect of the ancient weapons, are controlled by a living being. So we have Poseidon. Now, Poseidon is not a machine, it's not some kind of device. Poseidon is one part Shirahoshi, the mermaid princess that can control sea kings, And the other part of it are all of the Sea Kings in the world that will listen and obey to any order that Shirahoshi gives. Okay, so both of those extremes together create an ancient weapon, because Shirahoshi, if she was evil, could easily destroy the entire planet with the raw force of every single Sea King under her will. Pluton, we don't know anything about. We know that Pluton was built in Water 7. It is probably a giant battleship. However, also, it was mentioned that Pluton does have the ability to wipe out an island in a single shot. And we saw that, 16 shots, but still, we saw in one moment an island being annihilated. And so people are thinking, well, what if it wasn't Uranos? What if it was Pluton? I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure, number one, all of the ancient weapons have the same basic ability to wipe out an island relatively easily. That's the whole point why they're ancient weapons. I think all of them have that power. And Uranos is the god of the sky, and it's also the one that we know nothing about up until now, other than its name. We don't know anything else about it, where it was hidden, or what its nature is, but god of the sky, god of the underworld, and god of the sea. So I'm going to assume the giant lasers pummeling Lulusia from on high in the sky, is in fact the sky-based weapon. I'm going to assume that. Pluton might be a giant battleship somewhere, and actually no, we know Pluton is dormant under Wano, and it's not going to be awoke until, the walls come down. That was just revealed. I have to adapt myself to all the new information in the One Piece world that we get dropped, okay? Because we just found out about that. So Pluton is still slumbering, but it might be the same thing like with Uranos and Poseidon. Even if Pluton were to be activated, and it really is just a giant boat, there might need to be somebody to make a mental link with it or something in order to control it, to have some level of hockey or something. You could, here's an idea. All right, let's go with this. Don't know if this is something that anybody hyposited before, but there's 3 ancient weapons, right? And there's 3 types of hockey. Shirahoshi, you could argue she is the ancient weapon that embodies observation hockey, because, for one thing, her mother, Otohime, had really prominent, empathy, empathetic observation hockey, but also the idea of, controlling living beings and bending them sort of to your will. That if that was going to be any type of hockey, I guess Conqueror's hockey in that regard. Okay, it's already sort of getting off the track, but just bear with me on this. Let's say it's observation hockey for Shirahoshi. Armament hockey would be Pluton, because of Pluton being this, destructive battleship, war machine. And then Conqueror's hockey would be Uranos, because it's destruction and death and obliteration from on high. It's you can't do anything about it. You can't resist. It's just boom and just obliterated, right? It's the death laser from the sky, okay? It's God's wrath made manifest, very similar to Skypiea. And then here we have Eam, who might have the strongest Conqueror's hockey in the entire world. So maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's somebody who has special types of hockey, or the strongest hockey in the world. Are they able to control these things? Who knows? That doesn't make a lot of sense. There are holes in that, and I just came up with that idea off the cuff. I don't know if somebody else already came up with that theory, probably at some point on the internet. But just an idea to throw out there, okay? Eam might have a devil fruit, although I don't think that's the case. I don't think there's he ate or they ate the Uranos fruit, and now they can control Uranos. I don't think it's anything like that. If anything, I like to think that Eam has the strongest Conqueror's hockey in the world, being able to bend people, literally remove their own will, that level of Conqueror's hockey. The advanced form of observation is to see the future. The advanced form of armament is the Ryuo techniques and everything. Advanced form of Conquerors is literally you are now brainwashing people, and that's how Eam is sets themselves up as the ruler of the world, bends the Gorosei, bends everybody to their whim. Okay, that's the way I would go with that. Oh, boy. But the thing else I wanted to bring up is in that same episode, though, when Beiji gets lifted up and everything, we also get a shot with the Gorosei talking about, the events that just happened after Marineford. Okay, so remember what happened after Marineford. Rayleigh, Jinbei, and Luffy went back a couple of days or a week later, and they rang the bell. And that's what got Luffy in the newspaper with the 3D2Y tattoo. But the bell that Luffy rang, it was actually mentioned to be kind of relevant. It was mentioned by Killer that the bell that Luffy rang was a bell from the Ox Lloyd. The Ox Lloyd was a warship the government had way back in the day that, you know, sank or whatever, and they recovered the bell, and now the bell sits in Marineford Plaza. Now, they normally ring this bell 16 times to bring in the new year. It's like 8 rings for the previous year and then 8 rings for good luck for the following year. Okay, so that's like the tradition of the Marines. However, Luffy rings it not when the new year happens. He rings it 16 times. Honestly, I think it just Rayleigh told him, ring it 16 times. You know, that it's not relevant because all Luffy cared about was, you know, getting in the newspaper with the 3D2Y to get the message out to his friends. But, you know, Rayleigh still told him to ring it 16 times, which harkens in maybe the end of the old era, beginning of the new era, like Luffy's era, the Supernova's era, so to speak, okay? So that was also a bell that was rung 16 times. Doflamingo's 16 holy bullets. You know, the actual laser beams of this weapon, you know, numbering 16. So there's some relevance there, I think, you know, maybe. And I might, like I said, just be grasping at straws here. It's sort of like the number 23. It's just like, oh, the number 23. Now you look around in One Piece like, oh, that's where the number 23 was referenced. Now that's where the number 23 was referenced. Kind of same thing now with the number 16, but whatever. Okay, let's just roll with it, I guess. Oh my god, that was already a whole video. Holy crap. I still feel like there's so much more to discuss, but I covered the major parts here that I wanted to mention here. Also, I throw it out in the review, but also probably God Valley was exterminated in the same way. God Valley was also their own location where the Tenryubito ruled, so it's interesting that Eam would annihilate that place. Eam might not have, like, I'm trying to think of a best way to describe this. Eam might be more of like a force that's like whatever is good for their own interests. So it doesn't really matter what the Gorosei want. It doesn't matter what the Tenryubito want. It's like all about Eam. Eam might have a very selfish, specific goal. And if it's like, I need to annihilate God Valley, even if it's the homeland of the Tenryubito, you know, Eam doesn't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's how it goes. Also, people brought up, why didn't they just Buster Call Lulusia? Well, if you're going to Buster Call it, I mean, that's still a very powerful thing, and it would have wiped the island out all the same. It's just that that's in getting the Marines involved, and it's like a military activity. It's very clear at that point that, because the whole idea is that the Lulusia Kingdom was rebelling against the world government, so maybe if they sent a Buster Call to wipe out Lulusia, which, yes, they could have, that might have incited more revolutions in the world. This literally looks like divine judgment. This literally looks like God decided just to obliterate. You have angered me, Lulusia Kingdom. Boom! Like, that is what this looks like. If anybody got to witness what happened, which I doubt there were any witnesses, given the fact that, like, you know, the information is completely scrubbed from the record and then the island is gone. But if there were any witnesses or survivors from Lulusia that got to see what happened, they wouldn't know what to make of it. They would be like, it literally looked like the sun just came down and just annihilated our island, and then that was it. We were done. It was over. It's gone. It's not there anymore, right? And it's completely wiped from the maps. That's like, like I said, that's the hammer. To put it another way, in this reference, Buster Call is the tiny little hammer. You know, Uranos, the ancient death laser weapon, that's the sledge, okay? That's bringing it down, okay? So anyway, yeah, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, I guess. Let's move on to Monkey Facts. And actually, a fan sent me a really cool intro for Monkey Facts yesterday. It was Enrique. That's a fun name to say. Thank you so much, Enrique. Let's all thank Enrique. Just say Enrique. It's a fun word to say. Enrique brightens up your day. Okay, let's go to Monkey Facts.
You got the funky monkey facts with Tekking101.
Yeah, see what I did there? Luffy as the cover because he's Monkey D. Luffy. Okay. So, as I said last time, we're talking about spider monkeys. Spider monkeys are New World monkeys that actually live in South America in the rainforest kind of area up into Central America. They're very interesting because they're one of the very few living things on this planet that are not extinct that have prehensile tails. which basically allows them to use their tail as a fifth limb. Okay, so they can grab things with their arms and their two legs, but then they can also grab things with their tail. Not all monkeys can do that. You know, a lot of times monkeys might use their tails to swing, or they might use their tails to, like, balance themselves or something like that. Not all monkeys and not all animals that have tails have the ability, like think of a dog, for example. Like, if I used to have a little beagle when I was a little kid. You know, the beagles are cute and everything, and Lucky, that was our beagle's name. He was a great dog. He had a tail, but, you know, Lucky couldn't, like, bend the tail and, like, you know, move things with it or grab things with it or whatever. It's just a tail. It's for other purposes. Spider monkeys are one of the few animals that can actually do that. So they can actually swing a lot more easily through the trees, and they live in the canopies of these rainforests, okay, and these high forests kind of away from predators. And they spend most of their lives in the trees if they can help it. If food is scarce, they might have to go down and, like, you know, forage for food in other ways, but typically they stay in the canopy. They can live about 20 to 100 in a single group. However, they do split up every day to forage. So I imagine they're all living together. They're all, like, sleeping in this one little area as, like, one big family. And then they get up and they're all like, all right, so Team A, you go off into that side of the jungle to look for food. Team B, you're with me. Team C over here. And the monkeys are all like, okay. And like, ooh, ah. And then they all, you know, split off into the jungle to go and find food. They mostly eat fruit. Let's see here. They only give birth to about one baby monkey a year. So, you know, it's not like lemmings or anything that are, like, mating like crazy or anything. Typically just about one every 1 or 2 years, honestly. Let's see, they have really good memories. The genus of animal that they are part of is Atleus, A-T-E-L-E-S. Atles, maybe I'm mispronouncing that. Anyway, it means imperfect, I think, in Latin, because spider monkeys do not actually have opposable thumbs. So it's like almost, but not really, and so that's why they have, you know, that term, so they don't have opposable thumbs. Let's see. They used to be hunted a lot for their meat, but lately they have been, you know, the hunting for them has been banned, so they are protected species, mostly around, like, Ecuador and stuff, but people hunted and killed them for their meat for many, many centuries. But anyway, yeah, that's the spider monkey. Pretty fascinating, I have to say so. Okay, well, thanks for watching the video, everybody. This will be Tekking signing out. Ugh.